Hello and welcome to Atheists Talk. I'm your host, James Zimmerman, and today we've decided to discuss secular parenting. In particular, we're going to talk about secular parenting groups and organizations that meet here in the Twin Cities to help out parents who don't have religion in their life. We've assembled a panel of experts here. I'll introduce them. To the very left of the screen, we have Audrey Kingstrom. She has a degree in education and a master's in divinity. She used to be a social studies teacher, and she's raised two sons. They're 18 and 21. And after that, she became a humanist celebrant and an atheist. And as community coordinator for the Humanists of Minnesota, she helped co-found the secular parenting group with Kevin Ike 9 months ago. And as a fun fact, she makes time for some serious vegetable gardening and creative writing projects. So she's very well qualified. Welcome, Audrey.
Thank you.
And speaking of Kevin, Kevin has a degree of arts in chemistry, and he currently works for a local analytical laboratory. He has one child, age 5, so not quite as much experience parenting.
Nope.
That's okay. He co-founded, as I mentioned, the secular parenting group with Audrey, and he's currently a board member of the Humanists of Minnesota. And in his spare time, he enjoys reading books, playing guitar just in his basement, I learned just before the show, and listening to loud rock music. So he's definitely qualified to be here too. And finally, we have Rhonda Lesage. She has a degree of science in psychology and criminal justice, and is a former lower elementary Montessori teacher. Did I get that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And she's currently a co-organizer for Minnesota Atheists on meetup.com, and she and her husband Mark are raising 2 children, ages 9 and 11, in a secular home, thus you're here. And she describes herself as an activist who enjoys reading, crocheting, and genealogy. So welcome, everyone.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming. So let's talk about the secular parenting group that meets here in the Twin Cities. First, can maybe one of you just tell the viewers, what is it? Define it, maybe.
The secular parenting group meets every second and fourth Sunday of every month. What we are trying to accomplish is to encourage more family activities within the secular community, get activities that will attract families, and then also have parent discussion. But we want to emphasize every event that we hold, we can encourage children to show up. Just like the parenting discussion ones, bring something to kind of occupy them or whatever. But, we have crying babies and all sorts of things like that, so it's not a big deal.
Yeah, that's good because there are a lot of secular events in the Twin Cities. If you subscribe to the Atheist Weekly email, there's a long, long list that goes out every Friday, but not all of them are kid-friendly. So it's good to know that there's some out there that are, or that people are specifically trying to make things kid-friendly. So how was the group started then?
The group originally started as an idea with myself and Audrey. What we decided to do was, like I said, somehow get a activity together that met constantly so that people had an opportunity to get together. Basically, our first meeting was February 26th of 2012, so we've been around. We started as the Humanist Parenting Group, but we recently changed the name to the Secular Parenting Group, so with Rhonda's help, we could advertise also on the Atheist page so that we can try and get more secular families to attract to the group.
Try to find the name that includes the most non-religious people.
Right,
Yeah, it can be tricky sometimes. So when you said that you meet twice a month, is there a place that you always meet? Same building or?
Well, we've been meeting at various sites.
Oh, okay.
Of course, we're trying to find places that will be kid-friendly. We've met in coffee shops, but now we've sort of settled on a library in Bloomington where we meet, which is the 4th Sunday of every month, and we're discussing a book there, Parenting Beyond Belief, and taking it a chapter at a time. We've kind of been evolving, kind of figuring out what's going to work for the group. And the 2nd Sunday of the month, during the summer, we were meeting out in parks. Sometimes we had a topic, sometimes not. And we've also talked about going on outings. So next week, on October 14th, we're going to go to an apple orchard in Minnetonka. So again, an outing, chance for families to connect with each other and for kids and hopefully the kids can start getting acquainted, and maybe some of the older kids. So far we've just had babies and like 4- and 5-year-olds.
Yeah, it's nice to do a physical activity, especially if there's kids.
Yes.
And again, there's a lot of secular activities out there that require just sitting, like at restaurants,
Yes,
going to movies,
yes.
or listening to a lecture, which are all enjoyable things, but they don't shed the pounds, like going for a walk into an orchard or something. So you mentioned a couple topics. Are there any others that you've had in the last 9 months or so that you wanted to mention?
Real popular topics seem to be things like what kind of ceremonies to perform. Like, we had a very popular rites of passage meetup, which would discuss things like naming ceremonies, coming of age, and even topics like death. How do secular families deal with those kind of things? And we recently had one which Audrey did, which was celebrating autumn, which went over very well. It was poetry reading and songs. It's a good time had by all.
Yeah, a lot of the transitions in life are marked heavily by religious activities. So you're trying to maybe find some way to celebrate or mark the passage or the specialness of something without incorporating the supernatural. Is that right?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And one of my interests has been, and in raising my kids, was to find alternative celebration.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done that a lot through my volunteer work at the First Unitarian Society too. So I'd like to bring that to the secular community, and those do seem to be of some interest, because when we just talked about it, and then we actually tried doing something together
Mm-hmm.
for celebrating sort of the start of autumn, that change of seasons. We had a fairly good turnout that day also.
Yeah, that sounds cool. So what about the future? What are some coming? This show doesn't always air live, so if you talk about something that's a week from now, it'll already be in the past by the time a lot of people see it. But what are some things maybe for the future? I mean, even 6-9 months down the road that you're planning?
Well, real goals regarding the group is attracting more and more families, first of all. One goal I had when we first started was to become a resource for secular families. Get enough heads together so that, when things like celebrations come up, or just regular secular activities, or just somebody needs to talk about an issue, that, we become a valuable resource for the secular community. We hope that we get big enough, maybe spin off to our own meetup page or something to that degree. But at this point, we're just working on attracting families.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah. How big are the groups normally when they meet together?
Sort of like 8 to 12 people.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
And a handful of kids. So we're still very much at the beginning stages. Another goal that we have, though, is to provide an educational component, some moral education, some direction for the kids, and actually do some programming for the children themselves. But that's sort of a daunting task, because, again, as we're very small, and the people that come, we have some babies, so, they can grow into the group.
Yeah.
But right now we have some 4- and 5-year-olds, and we have a few parents that have been involved who have some older children, and they haven't brought them. Mm-hmm. But if we can get a small core group, maybe in different age groups, we'd like to start offering some programming. So that really is a goal of ours, so that the children also have sort of some sense of community. So we really want to build sort of a sense of community among families and the kids themselves, as well as, of course, the parents.
Yeah, well, hopefully more people will see this program and be encouraged to join and to help out, because it sounds promising and that there's a lot of opportunities. So what I wanted to do too was talk about some of the things that you three have employed in raising your children, or that you hope to employ in raising them as they get older. Maybe we'll start with Rhonda, because we haven't heard from you enough yet. So what are some educational materials or ideas that you use in raising children?
Well,
your children.
I'm only raising my own.
Okay, gotta clarify.
My husband and I try to instill, we want our kids to be critical thinkers and lifelong learners, and to, you know, just question things that they read or hear or see in the media, and, you know, dig deeper and do a little research. So, you know, we really encourage them to ask questions, which was not something that was part of my upbringing. And there are a couple of books.
Yeah, show us the books.
All right. This was the first book that I introduced to my kids. It's called In the Beginning, Creation Stories from Around the World. And I like it because it presents these creation stories, myths, and you know, it exposes the kids to different cultures and the way different cultures believed the world began. And so we'll read one story and then we'll talk about it. Well, what do you think about that? Why do you think the people thought that, you know, the world was created by this turtle falling from the sky? Or, and I think it's a wonderful way to get a conversation started about that. And it doesn't criticize the stories at all, it just presents the stories.
Yeah, sure, just a book of short stories, essentially,
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, you can tell us the other books you have too.
Oh, sure. Another book that is a favorite of mine is the Usborne Encyclopedia of World Religions, and it's designed for children. So it's beautifully illustrated. Well, it's mostly kind of like photographs.
Oh, yeah,
so it's very colorful. It really captures the kids and draws them in. And it keeps the descriptions short, so it keeps their interest. And the thing that I love most about it is that it's internet linked. So say, for example, we were reading about Judaism. Down in the corner, it says where you can go. It's to learn more about where the Talmud was written and why it was written. And there's different things that you can learn about. And there's examples of Jewish sayings and so on. And it starts off by, the first chapter is just what is religion? And I think that's important because they're aware that kids at their school practice different religions, and they'll come home and say, you know, so-and-so is Hmong. What does that mean, Mom? And so we can go to this book, look it up, and talk about it. And I want my kids to be respectful of other people's beliefs. And so we have a lot of conversations around the dinner table about that. And, you know, I tell them, well, that's what their family believes, and that's their faith tradition, and you shouldn't make fun of them for that or exclude them from playing with you or anything, because they have the right to have that belief, and it's just different from ours.
Yeah, that's a good tactic. You know, when I was a kid, I was raised religious, and I told the kids in first and second grade that there was no Santa Claus, because even though we were religious, we didn't believe in, we didn't do Christmas. So at conferences, the teacher told my parents, maybe he can tone that down a little bit, be a little more respectful. So I was just thinking I was just bringing the truth to them. But,
Sure.
So, and then did you want to mention one more book?
Oh, sure. The third book I brought is Richard Dawkins' Magic of Reality, which I think came out maybe about a year ago or so. And this is written as a children's book, but more for older kids. I would say, depending on the child, 10 and up, maybe more for 12, 15-year-olds. My daughter just turned 9. I've tried reading some of this to her, and it kind of goes over her head because he is a evolutionary biologist, and you know. But my son really enjoyed me reading this to him quite a bit because the chapters are very interesting. Like, who was the first person? Why are there so many different kinds of animals? What is the sun? What is a rainbow? And I think those are really good questions that most kids ask anyways, and so why not have a great resource where you can go and learn from a non-magical thinking point of view, you know?
Yeah, I think it's a good book too. We did a whole show actually just about that book with a couple of people who had read it and discussing it. And like we mentioned before the show started, just talking amongst ourselves, that the pictures, the illustrations in it are just first rate. So
they
are fun for someone younger than 10 to enjoy anyway.
Yes.
That will get them to ask some questions, and then you can explain it in terms they can understand.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Absolutely.
So thanks for those recommendations, Rhonda. And then Kevin, how about you? What reading materials do you prefer? Or have you used, I should ask?
When I was researching online various things for children's programs and whatnot, I ended up on the American Humanist Association website. And related to the American Humanist Association is this institute called the Coker Humanist Education Institute. I probably just butchered that. But
I wouldn't know. This is the first I've heard of it was when you told me the name.
Right. So anyways, they have a free PDF download that you can get that's basically starting children's programs. Now, the first part of it's a little inundating, and you just kind of breeze through it, but they have a section in there which talks about various books and references. And I found various books in there that I liked a lot, and they're kind of more philosophical in nature. Mm-hmm. The first one is this Love Your Neighbor by Arthur Dobrin. What it is it's basically fairy tales, but it's fairy tales that have kind of virtue messages behind them. The very first one, I believe, is The Kindness of Squirrels, where it talks about two squirrels have known each other since they were kids. And they were like, oh, we'll always be friends together. And one grows up, gets married, and the other one stays single. And of course, the one squirrel is like, oh, well, so-and-so is single, so we should bring them some food. And then, of course, the one that's single is like, oh, well, so-and-so has so many kids, I should bring them food. And it's just discussing stories like that. And there's actually a free booklet you can download also for this book that has activities in it. Further questions you can talk to kids about, but there's actually one activity where you could make squirrels out of pine cones.
Oh, really?
Oh, cute.
So the book you had to order, but
yes.
And did you order it from the Coker Humanist site?
I got it right from Amazon.
Oh, okay. But you were just directed there from the PDF?
Yep.
Okay, at Coker. All right.
And then another great reference that I got off of that children's manual was the Northwest Center for Philosophy for Children, which is a mouthful, but it's a nonprofit organization that's associated with the Department of Washington, the University of Washington Department of Philosophy. It's a great website because it has these books in it, but also has questions, kind of philosophical questions that can go with it. So the first book I brought is The Runaway Bunny by Margaret Wise Brown. This is about a son basically stating, well, I'm going to go run away, and what are you going to do about it? And he'll say something like, I'll run away and turn into a rock on top of a mountain. And the mom will say, well, I will turn into a mountain climber and find you. And it has various questions like, what does it mean to change, and how is something still something if it changes slightly? Just philosophical things like that.
And Margaret Brown is better known as the author of Goodnight Moon.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And the other book from that philosophy is The Incredible Painting of Felix Clouseau by John Agee. And this is a book where the painter creates a painting, but they all come to life. And of course, they cause trouble and whatnot. And the questions associated with her are things like, what is beauty, and associated questions along those lines. The last book I brought isn't associated at all with the Humanist Association. It's Evolution by Daniel Loxton. This book is more geared towards older kids, but it is actually a great book to learn about evolution. It's nice and simple, and I actually enjoyed reading it myself because, I kind of avoided biology classes except for the ones I took in high school. So it was a nice refresher.
Looks a little more slender than the Dawkins book, so quicker to read too.
Okay. Definitely for older children, but it's great.
All right. Well, thank you for those suggestions. And actually, the places you mentioned, like the Coker Humanist site, we put the websites on the screen so that our viewers can copy down the site or click to them. So, and then Audrey, thank you for waiting. Did you have some materials that you wanted to discuss?
Well, I'd like to just put a big promotion in for our public libraries. You know, my kids are older, and I don't have. I think we stored away some of their favorite books in the attic, so I didn't have access to some of the things that they had fun with. But one of the things that we always did as a family is go to the library. And we live not too far from the Southdale Library, and that's quite a large library, regional library, so there was tons of books there, as well as we'd come downtown to the downtown library for a fun outing. But whether they were storybooks that had good morals, I mean, you could just find anything and always have discussion. Story time was also always very important in our family. But also, whatever the kids were interested in, you know, we could look up, and if it was dinosaurs, we were learning about the dinosaurs. If it was about the weather patterns and the world, or what was under the earth, there are really so many wonderful sound science books that are geared for children that are out there, and you can just browse the library. And if my kids didn't quite want to do it, and they had questions and I'm not prepared to, science was not my strong suit, you know, I could find wonderful books for them. And so, you know, believe it or not, I can't believe it. I know it. I know it's true because they say it at the library. You can take out 100 books, but we often would leave the library with maybe 30 books.
That's still a lot.
And yes.
For just the 3 weeks or so.
Yes, and we would go through things and we would read with the kids. And the other thing that we did do as a family is we got involved at the First Unitarian Society, which is a humanist-leaning congregation. And through that, the kids did have some exposure to other religions. Besides, I was brought up Christian, and they had Christian extended family members, so there was constant discussion in our household. But also there was a real sense of community because my kids, some of the schools that they were in, sometimes in their classes, my son would come home and say, I cannot tell my friend I don't believe in God, or I don't think he'll be my friend anymore. And my kids were very upset about those kinds of experiences. So by having a sense of community with other people that didn't believe in God and other kids, that was really powerful.
That's nice.
And that's one of the things that I think I'd like to bring to the secular community here in the Twin Cities. So
thank you
parents
for those
and kids have those supports.
Well, and I wanted to add to that, we want our children to be culturally literate, and so even though we don't go to church or follow a religion, we do want them to be aware that predominantly in our culture, people are Christian, and so we will take out the Bible and we'll read to them from Genesis and talk about that. And you know, we want them to know the story of Noah because they're going to hear about that story over and over, referenced in many places. And we don't want them to not know what those references are. And so we talk about that, and we also expose them to other stories from other cultures that are very similar, and we ask them, where have you heard that story before? Does that sound like another story we've read? And they'll say, well, yeah, that sounds like the story of Noah. And so then we'll talk about why there might be similarities and where those stories may have originated from. And it's a great way to, you know, have conversations with the kids, and just so they won't feel left out too.
No, I think it is important to know those things to be culturally literate, you know, just as when someone gets older, they should at least have a passing familiarity with Shakespeare's works so that they have some sort of cultural literacy.
Yes.
When my son once asked me what was in the Bible, I started reading to him from the beginning of First Chronicles, which is about the driest thing you can find. But my point was just to show him, it's so boring, let's get back to our Beverly Cleary book we're reading. So maybe Noah or Jonah would have been a kinder option. So we only have a couple minutes left, but I just wanted to say that all the books that we saw are pretty much for kids or teenagers, but there were some books specifically for parents that I know that we brought, so maybe we can talk about those for just a couple minutes if that's okay.
Sure.
Just so that parents can see what they can read themselves, not necessarily to their kids, but to learn about better ways to parent secularly.
Well, really the book to start with is Parenting Beyond Belief, which is edited by Dale McGowan. This is a fantastic book.
And he's a Minnesotan.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's great because it goes through all the various questions you probably could have raising your kids secular. And another point I really wanted to make with this book is the back of it actually has references to the various secular organizations too, and gives descriptions of them. Because when I first read this book, I was still kind of trying to figure out what the heck is out there. And this book is excellent for that. But it does things like, it discusses ceremonies, death. Not that we're,
overtly morbid. Yeah.
Overtly morbid. And gives other parents stories. It's wonderful.
Yeah, that was a good option. I read that book maybe 5 years ago, so I think I should read it again now that you mention it. But yeah, I do remember it being just chock full of useful information and resources to go elsewhere. And then do you maybe want to just quickly mention the titles and authors of the other two books here so that the viewers can see?
The next one is Raising Freethinkers, which is by Dale McGowan and 3 other authors. This is a companion book to Parenting Beyond Belief. It has activities in it, and it's mainly set up as kind of a question and answer kind of book with, like I said, activities.
So more of like, where do I go from here after reading Parenting Beyond Belief, or what can I do? Sure. And then finally?
And finally, for those of us that like to have our realities rocked once in a while, this book is called Nurture Shock by Poe Bronson and Ashley Merriman. It actually talks about various myths that we have concerning children. One of my favorites is basically that it's no better than chance to basically figure out if a child is lying or not. We're actually very horrible at figuring it out.
All right. Well, thank you for all the suggestions for things from the library, UU organizations, to the books just for our kids or for us as parents to read. Thank you for your time coming on the show, to you guys. And like we said earlier, maybe we'll come back again in like 6 months and see what's up with the parenting group then. Okay.
Great.
And thank you for tuning in and watching our show today. If you would be interested in being on the show or learning more about us, please contact us at the address or phone number that you see on the screen, because if you're interested in us, we're interested in you. And if you'd like, we'll be happy to send you a free copy of the Minnesota Atheist newsletter so that you can find out about other activities that are going on within the secular organizations. Thank you.